Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a walkthrough before the tutorial and just kind of give you a little bit of a heads up that I did have a lot of issues with my recording shutting off or getting interrupted quite a bit. So there were some areas that maybe didn't get filmed. I did try and go back and add the instructions to it. If I miss something, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and ask those questions, and I'll do my best to help you any way that I can. The album itself is fairly easy to put together. I took you on this ride with me. I really didn't have a plan when I got started. So here's my beautiful cover page. I am obsessed with this paper line. I think it is just absolutely stunning. I knew when I saw it, I wanted to do a shaker on the front of my album. I wasn't sure what that was going to entail until I opened up all the frames and found one of the chipboard frames that I wanted to use. And that is actually what dictated the size of my album. So my album does measure 8 by 6 1/4, I want to say, is what it ended up being. I did go a little over 6. I'm also really weird about trying to conserve or utilize every little piece of paper. So that is why I went with the 6 1/4, because it then lent itself for the pattern paper for most of the matting to be cut at 6 inches. However, the pages inside are smaller. So I am going to show you guys also what I have left for paper, just to kind of show you what scraps that I do have left over after completing this album. So this album does feature this beautiful shaker on the front, and I've got kind of a mix of sequins and stuff in there. There's some really pretty pink and black butterflies in there, and I've got the purple and the pink sequins, and then some of the clear gemstones, and there's some hearts in there and kind of that green color. There's some sparkly ones in there somewhere. There's lots of gems as well. I've got the kind of bluish green gems, the clear gems, and some pink ones, and then some darker pink ones. I added these flowers kind of last minute, so they do hide a little bit of that shaker, but I do think it still turned out quite beautifully. The album does have a tie closure. The spine is 2 inches wide, and I've just got one of the stickers there, and then the back is just the paper. So let's open this up and take a peek. And I've got 3 colors of seam binding for the closure, and these are 3 of the colors that are really featured a lot throughout this collection. So the inside cover is fairly simple. I left it fairly plain. I really liked this diagonal striped paper, and so it really kind of highlights that. I did mat the banner sticker on black cardstock just to kind of make that pop off the back piece a little bit better. And then I've got a small diagonal corner pocket here, and it is 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. It is square. I mounted this lovely little moment sticker here on the black cardstock as well, just to make that pop. And then I've got 3 of the tags on the tag cut apart sheet, and all I did was add the ribbon to those, and I used those 3 coordinating colors again, and then filled the pocket with those. The first page, you will see most of the construction throughout. I did not film any of the decorating. I had intended to film some of it, but ended up not. So these are just from the cut apart. They're mounted on black cardstock and then just mounted on the diagonal corner pockets that we did in the construction part. couple more of the tags, and I didn't mount these tags to anything, so they are just the cardstock. But the reason I didn't is because they're so beautiful on both the front and the back, and I really didn't want to hide any of that. So I've got some of the stickers here. I absolutely love the sticker sheet with all of the little phrases. And I'll show you what I've got left of that too at the end. So then the gatefold opens, and I've just got some patterned paper in there. I left that fairly plain once again. Once pictures are added to that, that's going to add a little bit of volume, and I didn't want to add any more volume to it with the decorating, just because I wanted this to make sure that this held it shut nicely. So that is the front of the first signature, page 1. So page 2 features a very shallow pocket. And then I've got this trifold here that is holding in this photo mat that's folded. And then this photo mat is actually tucked inside the pocket that is at the top of the first page. And then I also have this photo mat in there that has got some paper piecing on it. So that is all in the top pocket of the first signature there. And then the second page of our album is magnetized, and it features a 4x4 cut apart on the front here. That really pretty ticket stub paper here. It's got all the beautiful colors. And then I've got the pretty floral here. And I did not cover the insides of these. Again, trying to conserve some of that space because this album did end up being slightly thicker and bigger than I had envisioned. The second page features a pocket on the side. And so that side pocket does have a photo mat that has a tag with a tuck spot and then a little bit of that seam binding on that tag. And so there is room for more photo mats in there if you so desire. The back of that page features a 4x4 cut apart. It says "Life is Beautiful" on that pretty colorful tag print again. There are so many reasons, so many beautiful reasons to be happy. Another 4x4 cut apart. And then I use some of the coordinating colors. And you may not be able to see that, but these actually have like a little white grid mark in it. And then there is some like damask and some floral kind of print throughout it as well. But it is very, very muted. So we've got the purple. I've got the beautiful tag paper again. And then this is kind of a teal-y blue color here. One of the stickers from the sticker sheet. That tag paper yet again. And then some polka dot paper here with a sticker. And this says "One Fine Day" from the sticker sheet. And then the front of the third page basically mirrors this. So they're the same, just some different colors. The pretty ticket paper again. This has got the cute little butterfly. It says "Never forget this." This is a great place to do some journaling. We've got the pink paper with the butterfly stamp. That pretty tag paper again. The yellow. The tag paper again. And then the pretty polka dots and the floral and the wonderful sticker. Now the back of page 3 actually features a fan fold, and it is kept shut with the pink seam binding. And this typewriter key paper is beautiful. It's got some of the purple and pink and kind of a little bit of the orangish yellow colors behind that, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then there's the back side of that fan fold. I've got the black and white checkered paper, a couple stickers that are layered here. The sticker says "Love and Adore." The butterfly paper, I just added one of the chipboard butterflies to it. And then this was one of the chipboard butterfly stickers there. And then I've got the yellow and white checkered paper here. And this is a sticker, and then this is from the ephemera pack. And I've just got half of that butterfly glued down, and then one of the other pieces of ephemera just tucked in there. That butterfly paper again. And then we've got the yellow and white gingham, again, only in the larger print. Here it was the smaller, and then this is the larger. I've got another set of butterflies there that are only glued halfway down, and then a couple more pieces of the ephemera that are tucked in there, and my dogs are going nuts in the background. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I apologize for the extra noise. Got the fun sticker there. And then the pink paper here, I just left it alone. It's just beautiful. So I let it kind of stand alone. And I try not to do a ton of decorating on these pages, only because I want the recipient to be able to add pictures to it. And if you do a ton of decorating, it doesn't leave a lot of room for that. Now, this third page does have the top loading pocket again. So here's another photo mat. It says documented, memories, and it just tucks into the top. Let's see, I might have to stand that up to see where that pocket is, just because that third page is thick with that accordion, and fits just in there just like that. So then the fourth and final page is tied shut as well. I kind of wanted to duplicate the closures on there. So it is tied with some seam binding as well. That beautiful camera paper is on the front. I do have an ephemera piece only glued about halfway down so that it makes a great little tuck spot for a few of the tickets that are just ephemera pieces, but they fit really nicely. Just tucked right under that little tag. That flips up, did a little bit of paper piecing up here, added a sticker, added another one of the ephemera pieces here. It says the perfect day, a little more paper piecing along here. And then I do have a corner pocket made out of one of the tags, a couple more tags, photo mats that have some paper piecing on it. And this one could go anywhere throughout the book as well. I'm gonna just tuck that one there. And then again, that's tied shut. Might move some of those mats once we get some photos in there. You can see it's getting thick already. And the fourth page has the end pocket. And so there's a photo mat with one of the tags and a tuck spot with the tag. So the pockets alternate top side, which I thought was kind of a fun variation on what people do with their pockets. Usually you see them either at the top or at the bottom. So that was fun to kind of alternate that. On the back of page 4, I've just got a little belly band, and it is about 3/4 of an inch from the end. Beautiful paper. And this was a strip from one of the pieces of paper as well that I used to mat that. And I've just got another photo mat here. It says celebrate every day over and over again, and paper pieced. And then I've got another little booklet. It says love this so much. I love this print. It's beautiful. A little more paper piecing, a couple stickers added to that. Paper piecing on the back. It says bloom and grow. Tuck that under the belly band. And I think this might be my favorite part of this book, but my waterfall on the back. And why I think it's my favorite is the little double band holding down the cut apart that holds the waterfall down. So this is hooked with 2 magnets. I love the sound of the magnets clicking in my books for some reason. This is just one of the 3x4 cut aparts mounted on some cardstock. Couple cardstock bands going across, and they've got Happy memories, shine bright. On the back is another cut apart. It says here and now. And then the waterfall features all of these beautiful colors. The front one is a full-on pink, and then the rest of them just have a strip of color so that photos can be added. And again, the thought process that went with that is the thickness of this once all the photos get added to it. So like I said, the book ended up, you know, it's fairly full. So once you add those pictures, it's really going to get full. So it'll be nice to have the seam binding to tie that up and close that up good. So I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. Again, if you have any questions on the tutorial once you go through it, you can work along with me if I caught any of my errors. I did type notes on the tutorial, so that should help alleviate any problems that you could potentially have following along with me. This collection is stunning. I will be back and let you know exactly how much of everything I did use and kind of show you what my scraps that I have left. Okay, real quick, I just want to kind of show you what I have left after constructing the album so that if you're going to build this along with me, you have all of the supplies that you need. So I did use 15 sheets of the black artisan cardstock for the base. And this is literally what I have left. Anything smaller than this went into the garbage already. So I am really good at using up my scraps, and that is why in a few places throughout the tutorial, you will see that I used a 1/4 inch gusset instead of a 1/2 inch gusset, and it was to use the paper that was already cut. So just a heads up on that. You may use a few more sheets if you maybe make a cut wrong or aren't quite as conservative as I am with your paper. I also used 19 sheets of the patterned cardstock, if I kept track of that correctly. So give or take a sheet or two, you're going to need approximately, I would say, 20 sheets. So just to give you an idea what I have left of that patterned paper, this is it. I mean, I could make a few more photo mats if I wanted to. I've got a couple 4x6 cut aparts, and I have tons of little pieces here. And I already did a lot of paper piecing throughout the book as it is. So if you don't like to paper piece, you know, you may end up using more of this patterned paper than I actually did. I plan on doing, you know, another project or two utilizing this. So I'm hanging on to all of this because I will probably do some more paper piecing. This is the biggest piece I have left, basically a 1/2 a sheet of one of them. I only used a couple of the cardstock stickers. I used quite a bit of the ephemera pieces, but look at how much I have left for another project. There is a ton left. And I had used the chipboard pieces as well. And I've got quite a few of those bigger pieces left in my tray as well. And then here's some more of those. They're quite a bit bigger. And then I also have all of the frames besides the one that I used on the cover of my album. So I foresee several more projects being made with this collection. Here's the sticker sheet that I have left, and I did use a lot of these words and phrases at the bottom here. You can see a lot of that is empty. I really like using those. And I used quite a few of the stickers as well. And then I also had the sticker book, and I used quite a few of those stickers as well. So, but as you can see, I have tons left, plenty to do, quite a few more projects, but I kind of wanted to give you an idea of the supplies that you're going to need going into it to replicate the album that I made. And I will have all of those supplies linked down below for you. I hope you enjoy the tutorial. Welcome back to my channel, Custom Scrapbook Design by Christy Stubbs. Well, I got this collection in a little over a week ago now, and it's by Simple Stories, and it is the Simple Vintage Life in Bloom collection. And I have been dying to build something with this. And if you follow my channel at all, you know I do a Scrap and Saturday series, and I will be doing some 12 by 12 layouts utilizing this collection as well. But I really wanted to build a book. Now bear with me while we go through this tutorial, because it has been quite a bit of time since I've actually built a book, and why not do it with you guys and get back into the swing of things, building one with all of you. So I took a look at the collection, and I'm kind of letting the frames guide what I'm going to do as far as the size of the book. I originally was planning on doing a 6x6 book, but I opened up the frames and they're all fairly good size. Let's just take a look at what was in that collection. But there's this beautiful floral frame here. And then this one says, "This is your time." I was leaning towards this one as well, but it's still measured a little over 6x6. And then of course there's these bigger single one, and then the bigger double one, and then the double ovals, which is absolutely beautiful as well with the butterflies in there. But I decided to go with the take the photo one. And so I want this on the cover of the book. So to accomplish that, I obviously have to go bigger than 6x6. This frame itself measures 6 7/8 by 5 1/4. So that is what's going to dictate the size of the book. And so we're just going to kind of dive in, and I'm going to see if I can remember how to do this. And we're going to work through it together. So I've already pre-cut the cover and the spine. And the book is going to be 6 1/8 tall by 8 inches wide. And we're going to have a 2-inch spine in there. So I'm going to design it with 4 pages. So let's just dive in and get started. I did pre-cut a few, at least the start of the book, to kind of help things along a little bit. And so I've got the chipboard pre-cut. Again, you've already seen the sizes. And then I pre-cut the paper, and I'm using artisan craft paper from Country Craft Creations. And I've already pre-cut that, 2 pieces that are 8 1/8 by 10. And then I'm going to take these handy rulers and put them on there. And we are going to put our adhesive on those together. So that's 6 1/8 by 8. And I do have a roll of the tape. And since this is 6 inches wide, we're going to just kind of center that. Oop. And I started off crooked already. But that's okay. And then I just cut right up against that cardboard or the chipboard without actually cutting into the chipboard. I'm just going to cut off that little excess there. And then we've just got that little bit, that little edge that's not quite covered. We'll see if we can get this one a little bit straighter. Oh, and I'm shy from the end just a little bit, but that's what glue is for. And we'll trim that one off. Goodness. I'm a bit of a struggle bus today. Okay. And then we've got the spine, and we're going to go ahead and cover that as well. I'm going to go over the edge of that just a little bit and trim that off, just because I made a bit of a mess when trimming that off the last piece, that edge wasn't super straight. So we'll straighten that back out. Okay. Now that we've got the adhesive on there, we're going to use our scoreboard. And these are 1-inch spacers, because this paper measures 8 1/8 by 10. And you want to be sure and burnish down your tape really good to your chipboard. Make sure it's not going to have any air bubbles in it or want to lift up at any point. So by burnishing that down, that really helps alleviate that problem. We're going to line our paper up, and if you just set your chipboard in place, you can see I've got an inch border all the way around. So we're going to go ahead and take off the backing off of our tape. And we're going to set that right up against both of those spacers. All right, and we've got one of them ready to wrap. And we're going to burnish that down too, but I'm going to wait until we get this one wrapped. So there's another piece of the Artisan at 8 1/8 by 10. We're going to take our chipboard again and take that piece off of the adhesive and stick that down. And then I'll burnish that one also when we're done here. But now we're going to do the spine piece. And the spine piece, we're still going to have that inch at the top, but we're going to have an 1.5 inches on the side. So our spine measures 6 1/8 by 2. And so the paper that we're going to use to wrap it is going to be 5 by 8 1/8. So if you put that paper in your scoreboard, and if you were to set that there, you have an 1.5 inches on the left side, an 1.5 inches on the right side, and then an inch top and bottom. And that's what we want. We want to burnish that down real good before we pull that off. Get that nice and straight. Okay, so we're done with those spacers. We'll set our scoreboard aside, and then we're going to burnish that paper down to that adhesive real good. You're going to want to do that with all 3 pieces. Okay, so once we do that, then you're just going to gently fold that paper over that chipboard and burnish those edges just slightly. And then you can see you get these little corners here, and we're going to cut those out. And we're going to fold and adhere those edges over. And we're just basically wrapping the cover front and back. And then we're going to do that spine piece just slightly different. So the spine piece, we're going to fold it just like we did the cover. So we've got the little square corners. So we're going to take, and I don't know how well you can see this on camera, but we're basically going to cut those little, these are rectangles on this one, and then on the cover and the back piece, you're going to cut that little square out. So I usually go along and just cut them straight out. And then I'm going to go back and cut a bit of an angle, and I'm going to show you how I do that. And on the spine, you want to be real careful not to do much of an angle. So I actually take and I fold the side over and then set my scissors gently up against that corner and then cut a slight angle. And then I just work my way all the way around and cut all of them at a slight angle. And by using the corner as a guide, it helps so that you don't cut too far in. So we're going to get rid of that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the cover and the back piece. Okay, once you get all those cut, then we're going to go and finish wrapping the cover and the back piece. And to do that, I generally will use both a wet adhesive and some tape. And the reason I do that is because the tape will help hold it in place while the glue is drying. So what I mean by that is, and sometimes I'll put the tape on before I do the cutting, and then that way I end up, cutting off any of the tape that has run a little long, like that piece right there, for example. But I usually put some tape along that outer edge. And then once I get all of it down, I'm gonna burnish it real good. And then I'm going to pull that off of there. And then I like to run a pretty good bead of glue right at the chipboard and then around the tape. And that piece I'm going to leave long because I'm going to end up hiding it with that other edge. But then this is where I like to take my burnishing tool and kind of just rub it up against that edge and work that glue in there a little bit and then fold it over. And that tape is helping to hold that in place. And for some reason my paper seems to be cracking just a little bit, so I am just kind of pushing that back together. And if you try and do things too tight, sometimes it'll crack, but I'm not going overly tight with it, so I don't know what's going on, but I'll be a little more gentle. We'll pull that tape off. And again, I like to run that bead right up against the chipboard and around that piece of tape. And then I just go right up against that edge and just kind of slowly work that paper to start making it bend and fold. And then the tape helps hold that down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and speed that up and get the front cover and finish this one. And then we'll come back and work the spine together again. And don't forget to burnish that tape down once you do put it down. We want to make sure you get a good stick on that and it doesn't loosen up. Okay, so we've got the front and the back covered. Now we're going to do just something a little bit different with the spine. We're not going to fold all 4 pieces in. We are only going to do the top and the bottom because the side flaps are going to be what helps hold the book together. So we'll go ahead and do just the top and the bottom. And then we will put the book together. So again, I use the tape, use the glue right up against there. Okay, and then we've got these flaps left. So before we hook anything else together, to help kind of guide the paper along, we have folded it, scored it to the inside, but now I'm going to lay it down and gently fold the paper the opposite direction. On that fold, I just want it to be able to go both directions very easily. So just very gently, a little at a time, work that. There we go. Okay, so we're going to pull our scoreboard back in. I find it easier to utilize the scoreboard. So our book is going to go this direction. So for me, I always struggle with this just a little bit. If I use the scoreboard, it helps to keep everything straight. It helps to keep the page lined up top to bottom so I don't have anything off there. And then I can generally line it up against the edge there pretty easily. So for this step, I do like to use, again, the tape, but where before we were putting the tape on the inside, we're going to be putting it on the outside because our page is going to attach like this. And so we want this tape on the outside edge. So I'm going to run one on both sides, and we're going to burnish that down to make sure it's got a nice, good, tight adhesion. And then I line that up against the top edge, against this outer edge, and I turn it towards me because I find it's easier to work it that way. And then in addition to that tape, I like to run some glue here. And then I usually run some glue about 1/4 of an inch in from the corner there, from that edge. And you're going to want to be very sure. I set it at the bottom and then kind of look at my spacing, and I do space it back anywhere from about 1/8 to 1/4. And I kind of pushed on that, so we'll see if we can get that to straighten out. And then you want to burnish that edge. And then I like to fold it and burnish it again, folded. But you can see that little bit of edge there. And that way, if you set it back just a little bit, then you don't actually have it sticking out past the spine. That's what I have found works for me. You know, somebody else might have a better tip that works better for them a different way, and feel free to share that. I love tips and ideas and tricks for this type of stuff. I have not been building custom books for all that long, and I am most certainly not an expert at it. I'm definitely still learning, but bringing you along for the ride. So we've got the tape on there already, and I've already burnished that down. So we're just going to pull that up, and as you can see, it just fits in my scoreboard again. And I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch from the fold and start my gluing. And this black on black is hard to see, so you guys are probably not able to see it as nicely as I can. But by using the scoreboard, it helps to line everything up. And we're going to flip that over and burnish it good. And there, you can see that edge on the spine there. So that turned out pretty darn good. That glue's still wet, so I'm going to lay that flat while that glue's still drying. And again, I'm not sure why I'm having such an issue with my paper kind of splitting at the edge, but I've been running just a tiny little bit of glue along there and folding that back down just to kind of clean that up a little bit. So in the few spots that I've got the paper kind of cracking and doing that, I'm going to go along and try and just glue that down and get that back to kind of a nice cleaner look. Fold this so your next one is going to lay flat. So you're going to go flat, and then you're going to want to come up and fold over, and that's going to be your third page. And then that one's going to be your flat one again. And then you're going to fold up and over, and there's going to be your four pages. So I like to, once I get that folded, kind of fold everything over and get it laying flat and burnish it. To help it stay in place. And then we'll do some more burnishing here shortly as well. And now I just use the wet adhesive here. So you're going to apply that wet adhesive on the hinges. So you're gonna glue those together, those two together, those two together, and then those two together. And I run a bead of glue right at the hinge, and then I just bring some more out because you want it to get a nice good hold. And this glue does does take hold pretty good rather quickly. So I just hold it down and then go along and burnish until that's gonna hold itself. And then we're gonna glue the next one. And I put my glue right there in the valley first and then come out. Now this is where you want to be careful not to use too much glue and press that together and end up gluing this together like that. You definitely don't want that to happen. You just want that 1/2 inch area to be the only area where your glue is. So see, I've got the two hinges glued, and then you've got the flat part there. That is going to be the spine of your book. So we'll go ahead and do those last two. Then I like to take and fold the spine both ways to help so that once your pages are in there, they will move both ways easily. Okay, so we've got the spine that's going to hold the pages. We've got that piece together. You can see how it's shorter than the actual cover to the book, which I did on purpose. Okay, so that's going to be ready to go in. But before we put that in, we've actually want to take, and I've got a piece pre-cut, and it was kind of one of the leftover pieces. Normally I'd go just a bit longer on this as well, but this piece actually ended up being 6 by 5.5. And like I said, I was just kind of using up one of the scrap pieces as I was cutting. You could go longer so that you don't end up with too much thickness of paper ending right in the same area, because it basically ends just slightly beyond that. But to put this down, if you just use the wet adhesive, it may have a tendency to lift. So this is another area where you want to use the tape. So we're going to go ahead and put that down on there. And I cannot ever seem to get that super straight. So we'll have to trim off that little bit of excess where I didn't get it straight. Okay. I think we're good with that. So we want to burnish that. Whoops, burnish that down. Good. Hold that down and burnish it. And we want to make sure we know which direction we're going again when we come here. And see how it just, we only went 1/8 of an inch shorter, so that doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room. We want to make sure and get that placed just right. None of it overhangs the top or the bottom. So we're going to pull that backer off, and then we're going to very carefully try and center that left to right and make sure we get it properly placed top to bottom. Okay, well, I like my pink, so we are going to matte that in a pink. So we're going to want to cut, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and matte this, this, and this all the same. And we're going to utilize this paper right here. We're going to double matte it on the pink. So this black piece here that we put on was 6 by 7 7/8. And I am going to go ahead and cut the pink paper at that same size. So we're going to be 6 by 7 7/8. All right, and here's what that first one is going to look like. Right there. And let's do another one. 6 by 7 7/8. Okay, and there's that inside cover. And then we're going to go 2 by 6. Okay, so 6 by 2. Okay. And then we're going to take and cut our patterned paper. I went 6 by 7 7/8, so we're going to go 7 3/4. Okay, so we've got those inked, and I really did ink kind of heavily with the black because I really like that contrast on that pink, and then again on the black base. I think that is a beautiful combination. Pink is my absolute favorite color. I adore using it and every shade of it. So this collection definitely speaks to my soul. I love this collection with the pinks in it, and then the blues as well. The kind of teal color. It is just the most beautiful collection I think I've ever seen. So I am excited to be working with it and be using lots of pink. All right, so that fit good. I may have got that on there just slightly crooked. I seem to have an issue with that. Getting everything really lined up. You would think I would avoid doing all the extra matting just because of that, but I do like the looks of the layers of color. So we're just going to run with it and it'll be just fine. So again, I run my glue along that outer edge and then just kind of fill in and then just burnish real well with your tool and spread that glue out underneath. Look at this spine piece. Okay, so we've got all of those matted. We're going to go ahead and put all of that down so that we can put our binding in the middle. So again, I'm just going to go as close as I can to the outer edge there. Try and center it top bottom, and I'm far enough away from that crease. That looks good. And you just want to take and burnish that glue underneath there and get it nice and spread out. Look at those beautiful colors. That's going to be hard to cover any of that up. Let's take the centerpiece. And I apologize if there is a lot of shadow on the video tonight. It is evening now, and I don't have as much light coming into my room. Okay, I'm just kind of bending the book to make sure we're not going to hit any of those folds. all that black, it gets hard to see. And then this one's gonna go right here. Get that one hooked down. And we're gonna be able to start on our pages. All right. I'm gonna go close to the outer edge again. Try and center it up and down. Okay, burnish it real good. All right, and now we're ready to hook this down. I finally remembered to put the pattern paper behind it. Like I mentioned earlier, I tend to always put this down and end up not having any of the patterned paper behind it, which, you know, in all reality is not that big of a deal, but I do like the way that it looks better when it does have the paper behind it. So we're just going to try and center this top to bottom, side to side. That's always a challenge. Top to bottom, side to side, press it down. Burnish it down without moving it. That's another challenge. Until it starts to dry just a little bit. And that looks good. We've got our 4 pages and both the inside front and back cover are finished. Now, before we get too much further, I want to put a ribbon closure on. This is another step that I always tend to forget and end up putting the decorative paper on and then having to, you can still get it in there, but it is definitely much more of a challenge for sure. So I'm going to just take the 3 seam binding colors that I've picked that coordinate with the paper and just stick a little bit of glue in there and glue those together. And then I'm going to take a little of the tape, find the end of it there. I'm going to use that to put that down on the front cover. And I just kind of eyeballed, kind of somewhat measured it. Might be off ever so slightly. Got it on the front cover. And then I've got just an extra long piece here. I'm going to make those all the same length and do the same thing and just run a little dot of glue to hook those all together so that they can't slip out underneath that tape. And I'm going to go ahead and tape down the back piece. I'm just going to line it up with that other piece and run it long. And then I just take and find the center of those ribbons by pulling them tight and cut that. And then later on, we can trim those. And lots of times I will even just take and kind of ball them up, even tie them into a knot on the end, just to kind of keep them from being all over the place in your workspace. Kind of keeps them just a little bit neater on your desk for you. So there is that. Now I do not have a plan for my pages yet, so we need to come up with a plan for the pages. And I want to just determine what length those pages need to be. And I don't know a trick to that either. have made them before and they've been ended up being just a tad too long. And so I'm just going to hold a piece of paper there on my hinge. And if we go out the full 8, it should stay within the book, but I think we're going to go 7 3/4. And then that will just make sure that they stay well inside the book. So 7 3/4 is what the length of the page is going to be. And then I made the spine 5 1/2. So I'm going to actually take my black paper for my base page, and I am going to cut it at 7 3/4. Okay, so we've got that at 7 3/4. And then I'm going to pull my scoreboard in. And then I'm actually going to cut that at 11. So I cut that at 11. And I'm going to score that at 5 1/2. Okay, so what that is going to do is give us our page to slide on at the right height. And if that lays flat right there, that'll fit just like that. Now it seems like it's just a touch smaller than the 5 1/2 once I fold it. So we can either go with that and trim these and just cut these at an angle, or I could cut my paper at 11 1/4 and then score it at 5 5/8, and then that would give it just a little bit more. Let me see. Let me take a look at this and decide here. The difference top to bottom is not that noticeable. So I honestly think what I'm going to do is angle this. So I'm just going to go in and cut that at just a little bit of an angle. And I think I'm only going to do that on the bottom. And let's see what that does to it. Probably should check that out after I trim the first one. Okay, that allowed that to even out a little bit better. I like that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and cut 3 more of them at the 7 3/4 by 11 and score them at 5 1/2. Okay, now we have an option of just sealing up this end and leaving this top open, and then it could be a pocket, or we could seal up this top and leave the end open, and then that could be a pocket, or you could seal them both and not have a pocket at all. But I think what I'm going to do is alternate that. I think I'm going to, on the first page, we're going to seal the end and leave it a top pocket. And then on the next page, we're going to have an end pocket. and then top pocket and end pocket and alternate them that way. I think that'll be a fun variation on the pages. So to start though, we're going to just hook these pages to the spine here. All right, and this for some reason is a challenge to me to always end up with getting these straight. So I'm going to start by putting the glue on this piece on both sides. And I'm not going all the way to the fold. I'm kind of staying just a little bit up from that. And then I'm hooking that down and I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch. I'm keeping the edge of the paper about 1/8 of an inch away. From the very edge. Press that side down and then press this side down and just get that on there nice and straight. And you can see I'm ever so slightly crooked going this way. I should have checked that before I pressed it down. So when I press it this way, I am just ever so slightly crooked, but that's okay. I don't think that'll be an issue. Make sure that'll fold good back and forth. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. We're going to run the glue on both sides here. Whoops. And then we're going to hook this page the same way, about 1/8 of an inch. We're going to line it up with this other page. And I just want to burnish it down on both sides. Make sure it's glued in there really nicely. Just taking a second to help let that glue catch hold on both sides. And then we're going to go ahead and do the third one the same way. Oh, they're really lining up nicely, coming this direction. Burnish that down really good and get it to dry. All right, and we're going to get this last one glued in. And then we got to figure out some fun things to do with our pages. When I say I did not have a plan to start this, I did not have a plan. I know a lot of designers will go ahead and design one and then come back on and do the tutorial and then build that book again. But I am terrible about that. I applaud the designers who do that because that is a definite time commitment, and I'm just not that organized. So I kind of design on the fly. So we're just gonna work this out together. All right, so far I've got everything still open, top to bottom, or across the top and on the ends. I might leave them that way for a little bit. Now, everything lined up perfectly when it came this way. But once we turn the book this way, we're just ever so slightly off. But that's just going to be how she rolls. Okay. So we've got our inside cover and our first page. And I think on this first page, we are going to have a top pocket. So I am going to go ahead and run a small bead of glue right along this outer edge here. And I'm actually going to take and put an extra piece of paper down there because I might have got a little too much glue on there and it might squish out. So I don't want it to squish onto my pages below. We can have it squish out on a scratch piece of paper. All right. It has a nice good seal. And then we are going to build, let's see what I've got for scratch paper here. That measures 3 7/8. That's not quite gonna be enough. I'm a real stickler for using up a lot of my scraps too. I like to use it. They do work really good for tags as well, which is probably what most of this paper is going to end up being for, just because it is narrower. Okay. And our pages again measure 5 1/2. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces at 5 1/2. And 7 3/4. Should be able to go 3 7/8, which is a little less than the half that you would normally use, but being as I'm being conservative with my paper, I think we can make this work. 3 7/8. Let's see if I can do my math properly. I'm going to fold those over, burnish them. One on this edge and one on this edge. We have just a little sliver of an opening there. Actually, get everything lined up just right. That is about perfect. So these will just open up like that. And what I want to do then is I'm going to put a little corner pocket on each of these gatefold doors. And then we can put a cut apart to hold those 2 shut. And then those will open up like so. So we're going to go ahead and cover these with some pattern paper. I never know which way is the better way to do it, to cover it before we put it down and hope everything fits so we don't have to trim anything, or to put it down and then cover with the pattern paper. But it looks to me like it is gonna fit just perfectly. So let's pick our pattern paper. And possibly our cut apart. I'm pretty sure I'm saving this cut apart for the front cover, or possibly this one. So I want a cut apart that goes this direction to be able to put in the book there. So that leaves basically this one, or whichever one I don't use on the front cover. So we'll use that, and then if we're going to use that camera, we want to coordinate paper that we want to be on those doors. And then also the paper that's going to be on the corners on top of those doors. So let's just see what we've got here. We're going to go with the polka dots, the pink polka dots. I don't believe we want to round any corners either. We want to leave everything square. So we've got 5.5. by 3 7/8. So we're going to actually go 3 3/4 and 5 3/8. Three and 3/4. One will go the 3 3/4. And the 5 3/8. Now this does have writing on it, and I didn't think about that when I was cutting it, but if I put that on like that, and if I put a corner pocket here, it's going to cover up the writing on this one. And then we should be able to do the same thing on the other one. So that will not be a problem. 5 3/8. We're going to go ahead and ink those. Okay, you can see my fold got really messed up. So we're going to fix that fold. I couldn't figure out if I had cut the paper crooked or what was the issue, because it became very apparent when I put the paper on here that something was off. So the fold was off, which would have really thrown the look of the gate fold off as well. So I still don't have that pulled quite tight enough yet, I don't think. Let's see if that's gonna do the trick. Okay, and I'm gonna put that under there because that's gonna help to visually see where we're placing stuff a little bit easier. So if that lines up on the outside edge and that lines up on the outside edge, I don't mind having that little bit of a space there. So that looks good. So we are actually going to go ahead and glue this gatefold down on that outside edge of this page. And I want to watch top to bottom and this edge here. I'm going to open that up and burnish that down. And I'm going to set this one right here. And then take a peek, and it looks like it's even. So we're going to go ahead and glue this one down. Turn it quick before anything dries and make sure we get this even. Okay, now we want to build a little pocket here, and we could cover the inside of both flaps and this with some patterned paper. And I think I will go ahead and do that off camera later, and then you'll be able to see that in the walkthrough at the end. So, but let's build these little corner pockets together, and we should be able to use some of these cutoffs. Yeah, I don't see why those wouldn't work. Okay, so to do that, this is where I probably shouldn't have covered this just yet. Okay, I knew there was a reason why I shouldn't do that just yet, but that's okay. Let's see how tight I got this. I'm going to lift this bottom and this edge back up, because I want my pocket little gusset to fit underneath there. Okay, we can make that work. See, this is why we do it together, and then you can see all the mistakes I make and learn what not to do. I knew there was a reason, and I told you at the beginning that it's been a while since I've done one of these, and I knew there were going to be some hard little learning lessons for me doing this kind of on the fly. This is why designers, do it ahead of time and work out all of these little kinks. But that's all right. We're going to work this out together. So you're going to need a 1/2 inch gusset at the bottom, and then we'll need a gusset at the top. And whether or not we want the pocket to go the full length and angle it off like that, or if we just want a smaller pocket. And I'm going to vote for a smaller pocket now that we have to tear all that paper up to fit that under there. So we're going to go at the 3-inch mark. So I'm going to cut this at 3. by 3. This might end up being too small. We'll see. And then we're going to score it. You know, rather than at a half, we're going to score it at a quarter on one side, and then we're going to turn it and we're going to score it at a quarter again. And by going a quarter, I don't have to rip up nearly as much paper to fit that under there. Keep in mind, there's not as much paper to grab, but we'll give it a good glue and it won't be a problem. Okay, and then we're going to take and trim out, and we're going to cut it at a bit of an angle. We're going to cut out that little box right there so that that folds nicely. Oh, we're going to cut it out at even more of an angle. So that they don't overlap. And that is what that's going to look like. We're going to cut that off. So we're going to just cut corner to corner. I'm just going to line that up and cut it off. And we're just going to tuck that underneath that pattern paper that we ripped up. And that right there, my friends, is why I think other designers put their pages together first. Just to avoid that. Page 1. Okay. Now we're going to cut that cut apart, that 4x6 cut apart. I'm going to use the camera. And then that will essentially hold that piece down. We're going to go ahead and mat this onto some black cardstock. And that fits in there like so. So that's going to be the front side of page 1. And remember, we're going to cover the inside of all of those with the pattern paper. And then we need to do something on the back side of page 1. And this one opens at the top. we're going to have this one open on the side. So we're going to go ahead and put a bead of glue right along the top side of this one. And close that up. And then that maintains a pocket here. And then this one, we're going to have the pocket be at the top. So we're going to close the side. Got the top pocket, and then we're going to make this one the side pocket again. So we're going to close the top of that, and you want to run your bead of glue as close to the edge as you comfortably can to maintain a nice width, ouch, for that pocket. Okay. So we've got all of our pockets. All right, so what do we want to do on the back side of page 1? Okay, somehow I lost or failed to film the construction of the back side of page 1, so I'm just going to walk you through what I ended up doing there. It's fairly basic. I've just got this little pocket at the bottom. So what you'll need is a piece of paper that's 8 3/4 by 1.5 inches. And then you're just gonna take and score that at 1/2 inch on the short side, 1/2 inch on the long side, and then again 1/2 inch on the short side. So you're going to score 1/2 inch on 3 sides. Once you have that done, you're just going to fold it all over, and then you're going to want to give it a good burnish to make sure that fold is nice and crisp. And that'll help hold that pocket in place. And then you're going to take and just cut right across that little square that you end up having there. And then I also just slightly angled that top piece back. And I did that on both sides. And I did just a very light angle because that comes so far and there's not a lot to hold that pocket down. So there's the little tiny pocket that I added to the page, and I did mat that before I put that in place. And then I glued my pocket down, and then I cut my decorative piece, my patterned paper, and tucked it down inside that pocket. So that was all it took to construct the back side of page 1. And then the other thing that I did do that did not end up being filmed either is I built this little trifold to go in this pocket. So this actually measures 4 inches across, and it was 12 inches long. And I just scored it at 4 and then again at 4 and folded it. And then I rounded all my corners and matted all but that back square here. And I made that because I also had a piece of paper that measured 8.5 by 6.5. I scored it at 8 1/4, And as you can see, it is already matted as well. And then that fold, I actually tucked into the pocket, have the flap coming down. And this is why it's sized the way that it is. It comes right above that little 1-inch pocket. And then my little 4x4 trifold holds that flap down and keeps that all real nice. You can see that my pocket's got a little bit of a bubble in it. And when I installed that, must have kind of pushed that open a little bit. So you want to be sure to try and make sure you keep that nice and flat so that you don't have that bubble. Now it's holding okay, but I can see where this could get loosened up in time and maybe not hold this in place real well. So you want to be sure to try and keep your pocket nice and flat on your page. So there's the construction of the back side of page 1, which got missed in filming somehow. Had a lot of technical difficulties filming. So there's that. Let's cut some paper. And we're going to cut it at the 5.5. For the height. Okay, and then we're going to go by 5. 5.5 by 5. We're going to test one. 5.5 by 5. And with the 5.5, that's the height. With the 5 at the top, we want to score at 1/2 inch. So we're going to cut several of these. I'm going to go ahead and cut these and come back. Okay, so I have decided rather than going on the inside of here on these 2 pages, just because I think that it's going to build too much bulk by the time you get all of this paper and then photos on there, I think we're going to get too thick here. So I decided instead that we're going to run a waterfall here that'll open up at the back. So we're going to go ahead, and it's the full height. Well, it's shy of the full height of the pages, which it's actually the height of the actual pages, but then that gives you that nice border all the way around that. So we're going to go ahead and round the corners of those. I do want to kind of soften those a little bit. And then we're just going to start gluing those down. And we're going to start out on this outer edge. I think I'm going to leave the pink border there. And we're going to want to try and center top to bottom. And I'm going to give the edge of that another real good burnish. And then we're just going to take and run a nice amount of glue along there. Take a look at this again, trying to line up top to bottom. Whoa. And get that just right. I want to burnish that down good. And then we're going to take the next one and line it up there. And then I always like to flip that over and make sure it's lined up too, but we better get a little glue on that. That'll help hold it in place a little bit. But I like to fold that over just to make sure. Oops. That we're staying lined up. So this is going to be the last one. And since it's going to be the last one, we could put it down just like this, but then you've got that black strip that's left. Or if we turn that, it still lines up. I got to get that folded right to show you. But if we do it that way and turn that flap and glue it onto this flap, then when that is folded this direction, you don't have that black strip there. And it just gets covered. We're going to cover all of these little 1/2-inch strips with some of our decorative papers towards the end. I usually do that last and utilize my scraps. Now when I turn that and do that, the other thing that I do is I take and take this back to my cutter and trim just a little bit off of there so that it does fit nicely. And you don't have like a little area that's gonna kind of gap or fold over on itself. It's gonna be just a little bit short, and then that decorative paper will hide that. So that's one trick that I have learned to do when I remember to do it. I don't always remember to do it. But then you don't have that little banding or that strip there, which you can cover with decorative paper too. Either way works nice. I just like the looks of this. I think it's a cleaner look when I remember to do it. And luckily I remembered today. So this one's a little harder to make sure you get it straight. So I do tend to kind of look here and see if it looks like it's lined up there, and then fold it over before the glue is fully dried. That looks slightly crooked. See. Get it tight? Looks like it's hooked down tight. Okay. Now on page 2, I seem to have a problem with my phone stopping filming, so hopefully I catch it every time that happens. All right, so on page 2, I've got everything kind of laid out. So I've got a 4 1/4 by 6, and I'm using up scraps. That's why we're not doing a 1/2 inch here. This was just a scrap piece of paper, but I wanted this to end up at the 4. So we're only going to have this little 1/4 inch gusset that we're going to glue down. And then I have another one, the exact same size, 4 1/4 by 6, and I scored that at the 1/4 inch. And I'm going to glue one down at the top and one at the bottom, and I'm going to offset those. And then I also have a 4 by 4 1/2, scored it at the 1/2, and I'm going to center that at the end. So we're going to go ahead and glue all that down together. And then I'm going to cover them with the pattern paper and stuff off camera. So all of that will just be available in the walkthrough for you to see how it was actually decorated. So I just set that in, about 5/8, 3/4 of an inch from the end. And then this one I'll set in that same distance from this side. There's really no major science to how I am doing this, just kind of making it up as I go. And I really just wanted these to be offset slightly, which they are. I've got that lined up across the top. And we want to make sure and burnish that down so that that glue takes a good hold. I'm going to go back, even though this one's been done for a little bit, and burnish it, make sure it's got a good hold of that. And then I'm going to take and center this one and glue it down. And I'm going to put some magnets on these pieces too. So we're going to determine where those magnets are going to go once I get this piece down, because I want this piece to kind of hold everything down when you open the book. And I'm a little weird, but I love the sound of that magnet catching. So I like to use magnets. Okay. That one's centered. We're going to burnish that. And then we're going to grab some magnets. All right, and I did get these magnets off Amazon. They don't have an adhesive on either side, but that's okay. They're super thin. They're very much like the basic gray magnets that I like to use as well. These just don't have any adhesive on either side, but we're just going to use some glue and some tape to secure those, and that'll work just fine. So where do we want? Once you get paper on this and pictures on this, this is going to get a little thick for just like 2 magnets on here. So I think I'm going to actually put 1 magnet on this flap here. So let's go ahead and put that magnet down first, and then that'll help determine where the rest of the magnets are going to go. I have run into, more so when I first started doing books, my magnet's not holding because things would get too full. So I was stuffing way too much stuff, paper, pictures, and all of that, and expecting the magnets to hold. So now I make sure I'm not so skimpy with my magnets, and make sure I use several of them, especially when you've got multiple thicknesses, to make sure it's going to hold. So there is our first magnet, and let's get the placement of our next magnet. And so you see it just hooked right on there, and I'm just going to put a dot of glue in the middle of that magnet. Now that magnet's going to stay adhered, but you've got that glue dot showing you where that magnet goes, and you've got the glue on the back side of that magnet, so you know which side needs to be glued down. Hold that in place a little bit. Put a little tape over top of it too. Okay. And then I'm also going to magnetize this one. So we're going to grab a couple more magnets. And I'm going to put one here, and actually we're going to line all these magnets up. Not sure one is going to be strong enough to hold that. We might. And I put that one right in the middle. Might end up putting another magnet on there just to secure that. But let's go ahead and get this second layer of magnets in place. Okay, so this magnet I'm wanting to end up on this flap. So we're going to do that little trick again and put a little dot of glue right in the middle of that. We're going to fold that over, press that down. You can see where that magnet is going to go. Slide that magnet on there, flip it over so that it's got the glue side down again. All right, see how those are all magnetized together. And then I'm going to go one step further and put a magnet on this bottom piece to hold this one down. So hopefully when we're all done, all of these magnets will hold. So it's always disappointing to get to the end of your book and have your magnets not hold everything like you thought that they should, and then trying to add more magnets. Never a fun process. So let's go ahead and add a magnet there. Let's see. We're wanting that one to hook down. That one, we'll grab that one. That one will grab that one. So we're going to do that same little trick and put the dot of glue in the middle of the magnet. Press it down. Stick that magnet in place. Oh, I forgot to put the tape down. I bet it doesn't stay. Oh, it did stay. We're still going to put a little piece of tape down just to hold that, so that other magnet doesn't actually lift it off the paper until that glue is totally set. All right, and I'm not sure that it's absolutely necessary, but just to be safe, I am going to add one more magnet on this one so that this will hold this closed. Like I said, I'm not positive it needs it, but I'd rather add one and not need it than wish I would have put one in there after all the paper's on there. So we're just gonna add another one. About right there. I'm gonna line that up. And these are really thin, so they're not going to cause a lot of grief in your book underneath all that decorative paper. Use a little trick of the glue. That works real nicely. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the glue dot where your magnet goes. It's a nice trick for getting your magnets lined up. It has worked for me so far. I'm just gonna glue that down. That will just ensure that that's going to stick. So that is the front of page 2. And of course, I will show you that once it's all decorated. Now, I had done these 2 pages last night and thought I had filmed it, but obviously did not. So I'm just going to walk you through what we've got here. And these pages are just mirrored, and these are the center of the book. So this first piece actually measures 7.5 by 5, and you're going to score it at a 1/2 inch when you have the 7.5 across the top of your scoreboard. Okay, then you're going to fold that over, burnish it, and glue it to the edge of the page. And then you're going to have another piece of paper that's going to measure 7 by 4.5. And with the 7 across the top of the scoreboard, you're going to score it at a 1/2 inch, fold it, and then you're going to glue it right on top of that other piece. So I don't know if you can see that real well. I'll lift that up. But those are just stacked, one on top of the other. And then when you look at this, again, hard to see right now, but once I get the patterned paper on there, you'll see it. I've got the base page. You'll see 1/4 inch of that, and then 1/4 inch the next layer, and then you've got this top layer. And then this is a 4.5 by 4. Again, on the 4.5 on your scoreboard, you're going to score it at a 1/2 inch, and then I just glued that piece along the inside edge of that page. And we're going to add magnets to these to hold those down. And again, I think we're going to need to layer those magnets just because of the paper thickness once you get the patterned paper on there. So we can do the magnets together, and we'll do both sides, and then you'll see these all covered with the patterned paper in the walkthrough. And I think I'm going to try and put the walkthrough at the beginning of the video, so, and again at the end, so you should be able to catch it at either place. And being as we put 2 magnets on that other side of the book, I think we're going to do that here too. So we're just going to start out with our 2 magnets. And you want to just be sure, let me put some pattern paper behind that so you can see where the edge is. So you want to just be sure you go in far enough that your pattern paper will cover that magnet, but yet not too far in so that it's easy to, you know, kind of pull that magnet loose to open that flap. So there's our first 2 magnets placed, and we're going to go ahead and tape those down to help hold them while the glue is setting, and just to make sure that we don't pop those off once we get the other magnets in place. Okay, we've got all of our magnets placed, and once I get the pattern paper on them and see how well these magnets hold, I will determine whether or not I'll put the link down below for you guys if they're a good magnet, you know, if they're going to hold real well. I'll stick the link below. I did get them off Amazon, and I don't remember what the price was, but I got all of these plus everything that I've used so far. And I want to say I paid somewhere around $10 or something like that for them. So for that cost, I don't mind using a ton of magnets throughout the book. But let me get pattern paper on them and see how well they hold before I actually recommend them to you. We'll see how they work. And if they work well, the link will be down below. So we've got the first page done, front, back. Second page is all laid out. third or back of the second page, front of the third page. So we essentially just need to finish up these last two and then figure out what we're going to do for a closure here. I haven't determined what that closure is going to look like on that waterfall on the end either. So we'll do that, and then it'll be the decorating, and then we will finally finish up this book. So I've got quite a mess on my desk here in front of me. Let's do the back of page 3 together. And I want to do an accordion. I want to just do a little bit of a pull-out accordion on this page is what I've decided, and it's going to pull out this direction. And our page, if I remember right, is 7 3/4. So we're going to make that accordion at 7 just to make it easy. And then we are at 5 1/2. So let's trim a piece down to the 5 1/2. And then we're going to trim this one down to 7 1/2. Oh, let's see if I can do my math. 4 1/2. Let's double check before we cut. Well, give me my 7 1/2. Okay. So we've got 7 1/2. And then I want to do at least 2 more. So we'll grab another piece and cut it at the 4 1/2 first. So we can have that scrap be a nice long scrap. And then 5 1/2. And 5 1/2. And let's see how that lays out together. We're going to take all 3 of those with the, I've got this upside down, 7 1/2 at the top, and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. And we're going to score all 3 of those. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and fold those over, burnish that edge, make it a nice, clean, flat edge. All right, so we've got all 3 pieces. And which way are we? Okay, we're the right way. If we start by gluing that one down first, then we've got our 1/2 inch gusset to hook on there. And then we take our other 1/2 inch and glue onto there. Then that'll accordion out. But before we do all that, I'm going to want a way to hold all of this down when you're flipping through the book. So how do we want to hold all that down? All right, I think we're going to hold that down with ribbon. And we're going to come across from the back side of this. So I'm going to grab some ribbon so that that ribbon has got a good hold. And then we're going to take the other end of that and we're going to come from this side. And I'm going to use some glue. And some tape. And then once we put the pattern paper on top of there too, that's going to give it another element to help hold that in place so that it doesn't ever get ripped loose. Okay, so that's going to be our tie. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but I did not measure. I didn't pay any attention to where I was at. 7 3/4. Well, and it ended up little off center, but that's okay. I'm not going to move it. That's close enough for me. So let's glue this accordion together. Now the bottom one's going to glue to the page. Then the next one we're going to glue. I'm going to put the glue on the inside of that 1/2 inch fold. This one's going down on the page. So this one's going to come back this direction. And I'm just going to line that up down in there. Line it up top to bottom. And glue it. And this next one is going to get glued on top of there. For some reason, I feel like they always come out a little bit past. And it's just the thickness of the paper. Usually I have it come back quite a bit more. And this one's just coming back just a tiny bit. So to alleviate that problem, if you want to, now mine's not coming out that far, so I'm only going to just cut a sliver off of that. Okay, so this is going down on the book. Always double check. That's going down on the book. This one's coming back this way. And so this one you want to go that direction. And then you've created that fan. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just glue in that 1/2 inch flap. And I'm going to line that up right to the fold and side to side and burnish that down. And then we've still got that fan fold accomplished. And then we're going to bring the book back in. And we went shorter so that it's not going to impede with the binding of the book or get caught up because it's too close. And that is the reason why I went quite a bit shorter than the page, so that we don't have that problem at all. And actually, then my ribbon, because I did go shorter, is closer to centered. It's still not quite centered, but it's close. So if that's important to you, you can measure that and get that ribbon centered. Some people I know that would drive absolutely bonkers, but it does not bother me. And then I'm gluing this down on the very outer edge of the page and making sure we're lined up top to bottom. We are. I'm going to give it a burnish. I'm going to fold it back and burnish that again. And then our little fan fold goes beautifully in there. You can trim or cut this ribbon in half, and we'll trim it to length later. I leave all my ribbons long until the very end. Once I've got everything covered, and then I'll trim them to the length that I want. But for now, we'll leave it long. As you can see, it's extremely long. But we've got a beautiful fan fold that'll fold out once you untie that ribbon. So that is page 3. You can see page 3 is fairly thick. Let's see how we're doing with our book overall. we're getting full. We want to maybe keep page 4 fairly thin with the waterfall in the back. We've got, it's fairly thick there. So I don't think we're going to do much to page 4. Let's see, what do we want to do? I think on this side, we're going to do a flap up and a flap down, and we're going to magnetize them, and that's all we're going to do there. So to do that, and are we going to go the full? Yeah, I think we can go the full length with that flap. Actually, I think we're going to go 6 inches with that flap, so that we'll go 6.5, so that it'll hold like a 4x6 photo. So we're going to go, I want the mat, the actual visible mat, to be 6.5 by 4.5. So we're going to need to cut a piece of paper that is 6.5 by 5, because we want to have that flap. So we want 2 of those, 6.5 by 5. So let's cut our 6.5, and that's going to leave 5.5. So we've got our 6.5 here, and then we want to go by 5. We need 2 pieces that are 5. So there's 1, 2. We're going to bring our scoreboard back in. And we want our 5-inch across the top. And you're going to score it a 1/2 inch. And you're going to do that with both of them. Score it a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to hit this one a second time. It just folds easier for me to score those more than once. I tend not to get my fold off as easily if I've scored it twice. And then you're going to burnish that. And burnish that good. Okay, not sure where that cut off. I got interrupted with a phone call. So I've got the 2 pieces that measure 5 by 6.5, and we scored them at the 1/2 inch mark, both of them. And we're going to put 1 at the top, or 1 at the bottom, 1 at the top. And that's it. I think that's all we're going to do on that page, just because it's starting to get really thick. And so we'll do that on this back page. I think I'm going to put a belly band on there. We haven't done a belly band anywhere. We're not going to be able to put anything real thick behind that belly band, just because we've got some thickness going on over here. But we'll glue this down in a minute. Let's go ahead and get this belly band ready to go and ready to glue as well, and then I'll glue all of that down. So the belly band, you can decide where you want to put it. If you want to put it, you know, towards the outside end, towards this inside, in the middle. I actually am leaning towards putting it a little bit on the outside here. And let's see if this scrap piece of paper is going to be long enough. It's 6.5 inches long. Our page is 5.5 inches long. It will be perfect as long as I fold it and score it properly. So we want to score it at a 1/2 inch. And then I'm just going to turn it around and score it again at the 1/2 inch. And if you would prefer, you can score it at the 6. I turn it around, it's easier for me. And we're just going to fold that over. Give it a good burnish. Fold this one over. Give it a good burnish. And I'm going to add that belly band out here on this end here. And so to do that, we're just going to add some glue to that flap. And I am just eyeballing it, but I'm going to grab my ruler real quick. Need to add some pattern paper behind there so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, we're not quite even. There we go. So that there's the belly band. And let's go ahead and put these two on as well. And let's see, just grabbing another scrap piece of paper to kind of tuck under that page. Oops. So that I can see. I'm just kind of eyeballing, centering it from side to side. So there's the top one. And then let's go ahead and hook the bottom one down as well. And we are going to line those up. So it'll be easier. It just helps to have that colored paper under there to give you the visual of where your edges of your paper are. Black on black sometimes can be real hard to see that. Okay, so we've got those flaps on. And actually, I want a ribbon tie on that. So I'm going to pop up that center on that one and pop up the center on this one. And now, lesson for you guys, before you put that down, put your ribbon on. But that's okay. I've got the pink ribbon here. I think I'm going to pull one of the coordinating colors just so that they're not matchy. So I'm going to go grab a piece of this purple and I'll show you how we can fix that little afterthought that I just had. So we're going to be, keep in mind, we're going to be covering this with pattern paper. So I'm going to try and push this ribbon all the way under that flap. I'm just going to fold it over and pull it through just like that. And then, I'm not sure if I hit the center on that. Let's see, we're 6.5, 3 1/4. If we come this way just a little bit. I'll put a dab of glue on it. Gonna unravel it with that little bit of glue. Okay, and then we're gonna add a piece of tape to it as well. And like I said, we're gonna actually end up, because that glue's not gonna hold real well by itself. So we're gonna put a piece of tape on there, and then that pattern paper is gonna go over top of all of that and give it some extra security. So we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to cut that piece in half. And we're going to grab that slide it under there. Luckily, I thought of that before that glue had really dried, because then it's kind of a bugger to get that up. But that looks pretty well the same. I'm going to add a piece of tape to hold that. And then you'll be able to tie that ribbon. So, clean my tip of my glue off good, so I don't get a bunch of glue all over my ribbon. But I also want to take and just slide back under there where I lifted that, if I can, and get that little flap glued, secured back down. Clean up that extra glue squishing out, and it does dry clear, so it's not gonna be noticeable at all. And now we've got that flap good and tight again. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, just tighten that back down. Off that little bit of excess glue. And you won't have this mess if you put your ribbon in first like I should have. That was an afterthought. But also worked out just fine. Got that in there. And that will keep those closed when you're flipping through the book. Now the ribbon did add a little bit more bulk again, like, you know, I'd mentioned we're getting kind of bulky, but it's not too bad. And I like the looks of the two ribbons there. And so now I'll figure out this closure and we'll come back and do that together. And then the rest of this really is going to be me just adding the decorative paper to it and doing the walkthrough. So I'll be right back. While editing my video, I noticed that I had mentioned that I would come back with you guys and we would do this little section together. So I failed to do that, or my video shut off. I've been having lots of technical difficulties shooting this. So I'm just going to walk you through what I actually did. So I knew I needed something to hold this waterfall down, because you can't just have this flapping free. And once there's photos in it, it's even going to be bulkier. You'll run into bending these pages. So I wanted something to hold it down. I came across this 3x4 cut apart. I matted it onto some black paper, some black cardstock. And then I had several scrap pieces from cutting all the pages to the book. And I came across one piece that was 12 inches long, and I believe it measures right at 1.25 inches. So I cut that piece in half. I then scored both of them at 1/2 inch. And again, I pulled my handy little tool out and popped this matting up and tucked that under there. And I have to say, I actually attached it to this 3x4 cut apart first, just so I knew what this spacing actually needed to be, because I wanted it close to the top and close to the bottom, so that I had this pretty little gap here so that you could see the rainbow colors coming through there. I really, really am happy with the way that this double strap turned out. Normally, you just carry one over. So I thought that was a unique kind of take on that. Tucked that under there, glued them down. I glued this to the back side of that black matting. I've got a couple magnets under here. I've actually got two because I figured this might take a lot to hold this down. So I've got two magnets under here, and then I did carry my matting on both the straps all the way underneath. And then I put another 3x4 cut apart on top of that. And then this top piece, gosh, those magnets are so thin. I do have the two magnets on here as well. So that is how I constructed that. I wanted to come back and kind of walk you through how the construction went for this little area here. Here's the final walkthrough as promised. If you would like this slowed down, just go back to the beginning of my tutorial. I do have the full walkthrough, this exact same one, already posted as part of my video. And I really truly want to take the time to thank you if you've stuck it out with me this long. This tutorial may have been more of a what not to do when building an album than actually what to do. But in hindsight, it really does teach you a lot of ways to fix mistakes as you make them. And every mistake or error can be fixed. And definitely I learn from all of my mistakes. Some of them, it takes me a couple times to actually learn from them, but I do. And I would also like to take this time to thank any designer that I have ever watched a tutorial from. The amount of time and energy that is spent building these tutorials is amazing. It is definitely a true time commitment and a labor of love, I will say. I also know designers who, build the book first, come back and build the book a second time for the tutorial. I don't have that in me to do that, but kudos to the designers who do. And I also have a dear friend who types up the instructions as well. So that truly is a blessing. Those designers are amazing. The ones who actually do put in all of that work. I sure enjoyed putting together this album, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would truly appreciate it if you would, and if you could give my video a thumbs up. All of the materials used in this video I do have linked below. I appreciate all of your support, and leave a comment. And remember to always be kind. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.